Bleh. Hey guys, welcome back to the Remind podcast. My name's Dr. Ashleigh Morland and I am joined by my awesome co-host, at least 65% of him today, David Masterton.
from about here up.
Today we are actually responding to a listener's question, query, in the best way that we can interpret it with extremely limited information. So we had someone leave us a comment about universal truths, which we are actually going to take as universal laws. And we're anticipating that this will be kind of across the next couple of episodes. So if this stuff interests you, go right now, click subscribe, click follow, and also take this as a note that if there is something that you would like us to chat about, just leave us a comment, get in touch, let us know, preferably with a little more context if you'd like us to answer something specific. But I'm really grateful that we have the creative license to take this wherever we kind of want to take it. So Let's get into it.
Yes.
So looking at universal laws, Dave and I were just chatting about this offline, and I said it kind of depends which model you look at, because the most common approach is that there's 10 universal laws, but then you have different, scholars and different authors and all that kind of stuff who expand that and include even more. So we're going to just focus on really the core universal laws that are most widely spoken about, that are most widely accepted and understood. And we'd love to know what comes up. So the main things that we kind of want to talk about is what they are, how they actually apply to your real life, but also from someone who works in the therapeutic and coaching space that sees this applied across the board. I'm really interested in deep diving into how these universal laws are weaponized, how they're misunderstood and misrepresented, and the most accurate word for me is weaponized against people. From people who think that they know because they have knowledge, but they might lack embodiment. And so the lack of embodiment and wisdom that comes through the application of these universal laws can actually be quite toxic, if you ask me. So we're going to start probably this episode with a bit of what are they, and give you the high level overview, and then hang around for next week where we're likely to go a bit deeper into the juicy stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So you got a list there, or should we just rattle off some?
So number one is the law of cause and effect. So law of cause and effect, you're probably going to be thinking back to some physics trauma at school. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's not a Newton's law, although very, very similar concept, that every action has a corresponding consequence. And that consequence can be energetic, it can be emotional, it can be behavioral. So the consequence of each action can be very, very diverse and often below the level of the scene. What I mean by that is that the consequence can be in the realm of the unseen, and that's why it's really important to understand that sometimes the consequence isn't like something that manifests materially, but the consequence can be something that manifests energetically, like, feeling really depleted. If I go and say yes to everyone because I have trauma that is perpetuating a fawn response and I'm really deep in people pleasing. The consequence of that action can be extremely energetic, where I'm going to be depleted, I'm going to be pushing against burnout, but the consequences can also be emotional and behavioral as well. So hopefully that makes sense. What are your thoughts on cause and effect?
Absolutely. Everything is interconnected, right? So if I was to zoom out a bit more and go, what are some of the absolute truths or absolute laws? Everything's connected, right? Separation is an illusion, a very good illusion.
We are going to talk about the law of divine oneness. So
so for there not to be cause and effect would essentially say, well, we're not connected. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we're trying to learn in our human existence is how the hell does that work
Yeah.
when we have such obvious separation? So cause and effect, absolutely. And I feel it, like that sort of cause and effect.
Yeah.
And I don't want to jump ahead, but probably my biggest, well, the laws that I sort of gravitate the most, especially at the moment, is the law of correspondence, which is as above, so below, as within, so without.
Yeah.
And also the law of attraction.
Yeah.
Like, you are always attracting. What are you attracting? Have a look around.
Yeah.
Like,
What you focus on expands.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yes, the cause and effect, 100%. So I think ultimately they all interlink. And we're discovering more. We're getting finer nuances on what these laws are, because someone sets it at a scholar level doesn't mean that it's not fully or properly defined yet.
Yeah.
It was
Because
defined.
scholarly stuff can just be nothing more than a hypothesis, an idea, a
Absolutely.
thought, right? When I think about the law of cause and effect, it can be very, very hard. I'm thinking more from the perspective of working with people who are experiencing the negative effects and then have to reverse engineer an understanding of their own personal contribution that has led to those effects. And we've spoken about this so many times. Like, perfect example in my life was the effect of being in a dysfunctional, toxic marriage, but understanding that part of the cause was my choice to stay in a toxic, dysfunctional marriage. And so this is one of the biggest barriers. I feel like, Dave, we can't separate the go deep dive stuff for next week. It's
What do you mean? We're already there.
It's physically impossible. So maybe we'll split it and we'll talk about a few this week and we'll talk about a few next week. But we'll call this the law of flexibility. Yes. So I think the hardest thing is having the awareness when you look at the effects in your life and then have to get really, really brutally honest, zoom out and look at what are all the reasons, what are all the contributing factors to have caused those effects. Some of those are going to be ours and some of them are going to be others. And so what I find, I guess, in the distortion and the hard part of this is blame, because the words blame and fault can be so challenging for people, but it's not about blame. The thing with universal law is this is really high level spiritual concepts. And in spirituality, essentially nothing is wrong. You just need to be willing to observe as a neutral, judgment-free observation of truth or fact. So it's not like you're being punished by the universe because you're bad and you did something wrong, and because you did that wrong thing, then you were naughty and had to be punished. That's like a common...
Tell the emotional side of your body that.
Yes. But that is like that thinking, the thought process of, well, I was naughty and must have done something wrong or bad and therefore I was punished, that is actually pointing to a toxic distortion of your childhood programming. Like if you were good, then this. If you were bad, then this. So the other thing I think...
limiting beliefs and all of that come into it.
Totally. Yeah. And this is why it is such a powerful diagnostic tool in revealing to us what is sitting beneath the surface. And I think another one is, and I see this in the coaching industry a lot, is that every hardship's your fault. And I don't think that that's fair.
Yeah. Well,
because
it's very
again,
interesting
it's
terminology.
about blame, right? It's not your fault. You're not being punished. And I literally just wrote a post recently where I was kind of in a deep sort of spiritual state, and it was about how iron sharpens iron. And we can have these conversations and we can throw those words around. Oh, iron sharpens iron. But the thing is, when iron is sharpening iron, there's heat, there's friction, there's sparks. Now, when your soul is being sharpened, there's heat, there's sparks, there's pain. And so it's only our ego and our judgment based on this wrong thinking around punishment and around fault and blame that makes us reach the conclusion that those hard things are bad in the first place. And we're going to talk about another universal law that goes into this. But it's not to say that the hard stuff is your fault, and it's not to say that you're being punished, but it is to say that you are being shaped, you're being sharpened, you're being equipped, and also that you're responsible for your healing. So regardless of what harm has come your way, even if you weren't fully and totally responsible for the harm, you are responsible for your healing and evolution through and beyond that harm. And I think that's a really, really, really important point when we can take that blame, shame, and judgment out of it.
Well, how were we raised, right? Were we raised to embrace struggle and pain in a positive way, not in a negative way? Or were we raised to sort of go, here are these things you can do, fun, distraction, all of these things that when you do feel this pain or you feel this discomfort, that you use these tools to get rid of it?
Yeah, exactly. And also we're biologically wired that way. We have a nervous system that wants to avoid discomfort and suffering.
I completely agreed. So we've gone to like how electricity finds the easiest path. And also separately, in a very simplistic, hard and fast duality, there's right and wrong.
Yeah.
So when you have a problem, there has to be someone who's right and someone who's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the concept is wrong, but the two people agree on it, there's no problem.
That's right.
There's no one to blame.
Because there's no conflict. There's no...
Exactly.
That's such a good point.
So when we have this thing where it's sort of like, actually, I'm right, you're wrong, so I'm going to blame you for creating this problem, this conflict, this discussion, this whatever it is, then it's that oversimplified version of duality, as opposed to, can we both be different and both have our same, or have our truth? A bit like the 6 in front of you and I'm standing in front of you and I see a 9.
That's exactly right. It's an issue of perception.
So, but the way we've been raised is, and we even use the word law, right? Law itself is governed by law, a definitive, this is how to interpret it, this is how to do it. So in that case, you have to have a right or a wrong in a simplistic duality sense. So that's the reason why we've come across it. Now we're coming across where there's no right or wrong, there just is.
Yeah.
Everything is meant for you as opposed to being blamed. But you really tapped onto something that I've seen a lot, which is the use of these laws in bypassing.
Yes.
Bypassing the sort of need to sort of go, okay, someone says to somebody else, I'm having a really hard time with this person, this situation, this pattern, this whatever. And the person's response is, well, you attracted it.
Yeah.
You brought it in.
Yeah.
You created it. It's
not
your
helpful,
fault.
is it?
No. Actually, let me finish. What are they actually doing? What they're saying is the obvious. Duh. Yes, all these things are true. But why do you need to say it? They're saying it because they've got nothing else to say to you.
Yes.
They are not either uncomfortable in being able to sit in the space and go, I know that sucks, what can I do for you? Or they're just sort of saying egoically, well, I'm just going to tell you I'm more spiritual than you, so I'm just going to give you some spiritual wisdom, right?
Yeah.
They're actually not helping. They're not holding space. All they're doing is just sort of saying the sky is blue and the night's going to come after the daytime. That doesn't help. And then they're off on their merry way. So they're not actually sort of helping. So for those people out there who are wanting to state the obvious, think to yourself, imagine if this person already knows, how is it helping?
Yeah. I think that's so important. And it's feedback I get from clients a lot who have gone to like spiritual coaches and coaches who are really using universal law in their work.
Yeah,
but
okay.
to me, the thing that makes it harmful is you're using language and you're using approaches where the person has no emotional attachment to it, because the truth of the universal law sits here, but their lived experience sits here. And what we know is we can't drag people up to a higher level of truth than what their consciousness currently allows them to receive. And so in my teachings and my work, it's about identifying and auditing what is that person's upper limit of consciousness, and how can I deliver this truth in a way that can meet them where they're at. And so
100%.
how can you raise this with someone in a way that honors their lived experience, that honors the emotional experience that they're having, and I guess resistance that they might have to experiencing these truths, but that helps them to explore, for example, their contributions. And this is why we do a lot of audits. If you go to our entrepreneur website, what do we have? We've got an entrepreneur audit. If you go to our leadership website, what do we have? We have a leadership audit. If you go to our relationships website, what do you have? We've got a relationship audit. Why? Because the audit is about exploring and looking for the effects. Because if you're struggling in avoiding difficult conversations, if you've got poor team morale, if you're burnt out, if you have kids who are super dysregulated all the time, if you have signs of anxiety or depression or whatever, if you have the effects, through these audits, we can explore what the effects are that you are currently living with. And it's our job and our expertise to be able to go, based upon the effects that you are seeing in your life, these are the most likely causes. And then by doing it that way and reverse engineering, we can go, okay, if the effect is that you have burnout, the likely causes could be things like perhaps you have perfectionist tendencies, perhaps you have an identity that is based on your worth being determined by your output. Maybe you have difficulty around being rejected, and so you struggle to say no to people. And it's the constant saying yes and overriding your nervous system and your nervous system's needs that is leading to burnout. So that's how we apply the law of cause and effect, but not in language of going, well, every action has a corresponding consequence. So where are you to blame for your burnout? It's just not helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be a level of self-accountability.
Absolutely.
in
But we
all of
can do
this.
that gently.
Exactly. And I've been around people who have been heavily affected by the weaponization of spiritual knowledge.
Yeah.
And how that is sort of manifested in what I've seen is that people will shy away from any of these things because it essentially, the way it's been weaponized is to say you and only you are the problem, and you and only you are the one to get out of it, and you and only you will be able to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right? Incredibly isolating. While the other person is the teacher of all of this wisdom, right, that sits on a higher egoic level because they have access to this wisdom. And when you think about how would you approach these people, well, I found that when you're thinking about a universal law or truth, there's an essence behind it. There's a theme behind it. And when you start talking about those themes and exploring the essence of what it actually means, what are you doing? You're actually exploring that universal truth without actually talking about it directly.
Yeah.
You're taking out, this is actually what we're doing. We're walking. Well, no shit, we're walking because we're walking one foot after the other. Okay, well, duh. I'm going to teach you. Well, actually, you don't need to tell me you're going to teach me. How about we just talk about it? We can share some things.
That's exactly
And
right.
you might learn something. I might learn something. What are we doing? We are teaching. So when you have to describe, when you have to navigate, well, if you have to narrate it, if you have to yell, look what I'm doing for you, well, again, there's a potential that you're going to be taking the knowledge that you've got through the ego that maybe you yourself don't feel seen and heard, and you need to express it that way.
Show people how much
you're actually going to be doing what we've talked about, which is at some level weaponizing or invalidating what they need at the cost, for your own good.
Yeah. That's such a great analogy. I love how you just said, because when you said about walking, the thing that came up in my mind would be like, hey, let's go to the shops. I don't need to mansplain you all the neurological activations that's got to happen in your brain to be able to activate the muscles, to be able to activate your central pattern generator to get you from the house to the car, to the car to the... But my desire to do that is more of a grandiosity of showing you how much I know. And I think there is a time and place for that. Absolutely.
If it's asked for.
Yeah. And like, if in my courses and stuff, we teach into the nervous system, we teach into this stuff because it's relevant to understanding what's actually happening in your body. It's there for understanding and revelation, not demonstration. And I think it's the exact same thing. If we were like, we're going to help you to change your life, what are we actually saying? Well, these are all the effects that's currently happening, and we're going to up-level the effects in your life. But to do that, we need to look at all the ways, like all the causes. It's not really necessary to go into the inner workings and inner mechanisms with a client, even though at a practitioner level, it's very, very helpful. Like this is the kind of stuff I would teach to practitioners. I would teach them all about the laws. I would teach them all about, because it helps them to diagnose and understand where someone's at, why they're at that point, and how they can lead them out of there. But it's not necessary for the client to know all the inner workings of that. And it's a big red flag for me if someone comes to me and says, oh, so you're going to help me change my life. Now, I need every single detail. I'm going to need to know what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. At that point, that's not necessary. They don't need to know the when, what, how, why. They just need to trust that based upon my expertise, I know I'm the one with the
techniques. Yeah,
exactly. And that, I think, is a really, really, really big, awesome analogy. I love how you said that we don't need to tell them exactly how they're going to walk. We don't need to tell them how many steps to take. We don't need to tell them why. We just tell them we're going to go to the shops, and you can trust that I'm going to get you there.
I just need to know it's going to be Bunnings or Woolworths because...
Well, obviously Bunnings for an electric mower. Personal joke, guys.
Oh, a lot more fun, yeah. And
all right,
I think we need to change the title of this episode. But anyway, so we've got one law down.
Yeah. Look, they all interrelate, so I think it's going to be pretty easy. Let's go on to law of attraction next. So law of attraction is what you focus on expands. Like energy attracts like energy. Law of attraction is, to me, one of the bigger deceptions that are used in the manifestation, new age, spiritual world. And I very much used to exist in that world until I had an experience. And it was actually New Year's Eve where all these people were doing like all these practices for law of attraction. And all these people were monetizing it, doing workshops on law of attraction stuff. And although they were applying the laws accurately, where I had a revelation was that I want you to imagine a vision board. Let's say on that vision board, I had a $10 million mansion and a Maserati and, a expensive handbag and whatever
Nice.
else. All of the things that are on my vision board are physical things. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but what
Hell
I
no.
am saying is that if the only things that you're trying to attract are things of this world, that when you die, they're left behind, there's some distortion and some deception going on. And I looked at that and went, oh my gosh. So I had this vision. It was kind of like a dream. You know those moments when you're asleep, but you're not really asleep?
Yep,
It was
yep,
it was
yep.
like a whole night of this, and it was relentless. And I just grabbed a pen and I just started drawing out what I was seeing. And it was kind of like, imagine you've got the mansion over here on the left side, and you've got source over here on the right side, source, God, creator,
Sure.
whatever. And I was like, why? The context of this was biblically, why are we warned against this? Why is it so bad? Because law of attraction is real.
To want things.
Yeah. Well, it's idolatry,
Okay.
right? And so, but I could not wrap my head around it because I'm like, I know that the law of attraction is real and I know that the law of attraction works, but why is it so bad? Why, from a spiritual perspective, does the Bible teach against it? And I had this revelation. I was like, oh my goodness, and I imagined my chin, someone of something grabbing my chin and directing my gaze to the thing that I wanted. But the thing that I wanted, if I wasn't going deeper into exploring why do I want that thing, then that thing was capturing my heart above and beyond the essence of who I really am and what I'm created for. Almost like the thing that I'm desiring is a product of my wounding to prove my worth, to prove that, I'm good enough, or to prove whatever, to prove something essentially. And that was real because, again, it talks about, don't just hoard things for earthly desire, because when you die, that doesn't mean anything, but experience this growth and evolution that does go with you at that soul level. So anyway, this law of attraction thing was very, very interesting to me because I found it was often used in the physical manifestation of material possessions. And that, to me, is a very, very big risk because, first of all, material possessions is attachment, which is dangerous in and of itself. You and I have dug deep into attachment stuff over the last few years. But that's the one side of it. And the other side of law of attraction that I see is reticular activating system. So if we apply the neuroscience of law of attraction, it's the reticular activating system in action. So, for example, if a parent believes that their child is difficult, then they will only see evidence of that child being difficult because their reticular activating system is actively filtering in all the information that supports that belief. And so that's what you focus on expands. If an entrepreneur, for instance, has a belief that if they want something done right, they have to do it themselves, well, then they're going to be finding all the evidence of that. They're going to filter it in. And so that's, related. You can apply this across every context, but that is the flip side of law of attraction, where it's more about the experiences that we have rather than trying to manifest physical possessions.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of thoughts on that. So the first thing is about sort of the manifesting. Yes, I believe as the light switch is turned on for everyone and we're heading into this new way of thinking, a bit like a toddler, we stumble before we walk, we walk before we run. Yeah, the analogy goes on from there. So manifesting is, in my mind, like what is manifesting? Well, it's taking something in your head, a belief, and trying to materialize it, whatever that is. So from a very easy to accessible mindset, what do? Well, you try and manifest physical things, right? because and a more evolved mindset will then try and manifest happiness, will try and manifest a state of mind, will manifest an environment, will manifest a society, will manifest a way of moving. But we're running before we've even stumbled properly, right? Because we're learning how to walk. So the first thing we're going to be doing is sort of going, well, what can I manifest that would give me that sense of feeling happy? Well, what's stealing my happiness at the moment? Bills, job, car, this, that, insert those things here. So if I can fix those, then it'll give me the capacity to move on. Where I hear you when it becomes really negative is it becomes all about that material possession, not about chasing the feeling, not about sort of chasing what it is that we're trying to achieve, and then the money and the abundance sort of flows on from there. So, and yes, a Pinterest style manifestation board will be a lot of physical things, but I'm sure if you look hard enough, you'll find these are the traits of the partner that I want to see, you know, and these are the traits of how I want to feel, right? Motivational quotes and things like that. But you're right, we're still at the early stages of what we're trying to manifest, because simply we're trying to take a belief, a thought, or something and really get it into our hands. And this is where I then think about the other side, the law of attraction. We are always attracting something.
Always.
Like, it doesn't matter. It's sort of like people going, I'm not attracting abundance. Well, what if you were attracting a lack of abundance? And then all of these things happening. And then when you focus on, say, the victim mindset of this attraction, you're looking at it going, well, it's not fair. It's happening to me. And hands up who's ever felt that. I've felt that a lot. And then it turns into, well, this is happening for me because I'm attracting this in, not because I'm a bad person and not because of all I'm being punished. You know, we've been talking about this a lot. We bring these triggers in to see the reflection of what we've got, and also, you know, the law of correspondence, so within, so without. So
exactly.
We attract it in to heal it, to elevate, because, newsflash, this game is rigged. This game of life is absolutely rigged, but it's rigged in our favour. Just, it's a really tough pill to swallow when you're seeing all of this stuff coming in, because we have elected to go through quite an incredible dark time to bring that light into it.
That's right.
So it's brutal.
Yeah.
So as we are attracting all of this, we're leveling up, and we have to be fucking crazy. We have to be fucking delusional, because we have to fucking stumble before we can even start to walk.
Now, why are you so passionate, Delulu, Dave?
Oh, because my level of Delulu is record breaking at the moment.
Yes.
But the thing is, we have to fake it till we make it. Now, we're not faking it because we're trying to put up a persona. We're faking it to sort of go, how do I change this belief in my head? Because an easily accessible emotion is the emotion, or what's going on in my head is completely influenced by my external.
Yeah.
And that feeds into me. Now,
and that's the attachment stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Law of correspondence says, so within as without, as above, so below.
Exactly.
Right? So it's sort of going, actually, if you were to stand in front of a mirror, look at that person, and they're not smiling, how do you make that smile? Well, you got to smile yourself.
Exactly.
That person would. So there's this sort of level of how do we break that pattern? How do we get into it? How do we manifest it? And what's going to put a smile on my face?
Yeah.
A Lamborghini.
Yeah.
What's going to put a smile on my face? A $10 million mansion. Yes. Does that mean my entire life in a scorecard gets an A+? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I could be the most
That's
miserable
where people
person.
get it wrong.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what I was going to say, is that the most helpful thing about vision boards and all that sort of stuff is I would encourage people to do it. Create your vision board, and then for every single thing on it, get a pen draw some lines and go, right, why do I want this?
Mm.
Then ask again, why do I really want this?
Mm.
And if there was another layer, even deeper, why do I really want that? That's the first thing, because what that's doing is it's diagnosing the wounding within you that having that thing is trying to compensate for. It's trying to numb out. It's trying to prove wrong.
Gotcha.
It's trying to protect you from. Then go to the next layer of this where you go, okay, let's say I materialized this. What does that mean? What does that mean about me? What does that mean about my ability? What does that mean about my intelligence? What does that mean about my worth? Then, hypothetically, imagine you don't materialize this. What does that mean? What does that mean about you? What does it mean about your ability? What does it mean about your identity? What does it mean about your intelligence? And it's that process of exploring and diagnosing the code of your meaning-making machine that is the very thing that is going to set you free and is the very thing that's going to actually create an attraction of evolution and ascension. Because while ever the distortion is with this is that there's no space here for understanding your trauma, your environment, your history, and how those things are distorting and manipulating the things that you are trying to attract. Because while ever you're trying to attract from the energy of trauma, of environment, of history, I can't tell you how many business owners I have worked with who had wanted to manifest all these, multi-million-dollar businesses and all those kinds of things. But when we got to the why, it was because they didn't feel safe without it. It was because they needed to prove to their parents that they were good enough. It was because, and this is what I call success trauma. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you can't have a multi-million-dollar business.
Be driven, absolutely,
but it does mean that you need to build that multi-million-dollar business and use it as the diagnostic tool to tap into your truth and actually ascend and heal. It's the inner healing side of it. And that is where things absolutely turn around, because when you're building a high frequency business, when you're building a family home that is high frequency and it's emotionally and psychologically safe, now you are looking at attracting energy at that like energy. And the energy of love, for instance, and a business built in love and a family home built in the frequency of love is a very, very different frequency and a very, very different use and application of law of attraction than creating the outer external outcomes, I guess, of what you think success looks like, of what you think a good home is supposed to look like, but you're building it from the frequency of fear or shame. Very different. And so that's, I guess, the deeper level application and execution of that, which is really important.
Yeah, I like that. And as you were talking, I was sort of thinking, I'll share what I'm manifesting, right? We'll get real. And for me, I'm manifesting sort of like a happy, like it's all about feelings, right?
Yeah.
And I've realized that the material side was trying to chase the feeling. So for me, I remember having this sort of vision where I was sitting on a camp chair and I had no material possessions, but I had my kids at my feet. They were just sort of hugged up, asleep on the ground. And I felt like I had nothing and everything all at the same time. It was kind
like
of
a wholeness.
Yeah. And then I started to think, well, why are people trying to manifest $1 million or $1 billion or whatever it is? It's because they want to have the ability to rest that part of the brain which says, do I have enough to feel relaxed at the moment? Am I going to go broke in the future? How far in the future? Well, if I add a huge amount of numbers, that future is so far away that my brain will stop worrying about it as a threat.
Yeah.
As opposed to exactly how much money can I spend in any moment in time? Like literally, if I was going berserk, how much money do I need right now in this very moment? Because a moment could just be a moment, but there's that feeling that you can attract into it, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's manifesting being with my my tribe.
Yeah.
It's being in a place where no one's sort of above or underneath or whatever it is. We are just coexisting, co-creating, sharing, educating, and we're just collectively being. And we're all got these different nuances or different superpowers or different abilities, and it's a sense of community. And, you know, as I focus on all of those things, then I don't mind if a $10 million mansion appears.
Absolutely.
Mercedes-Benz, a boat, all of these things.
Because they can be, like, it's not a bad thing. This is what I really want to get across. I am not saying, don't hear what I'm not saying, that it is a bad thing to have a $10 million mansion or to have a private jet, because they can be experiences that can be manifested and experienced in its wholeness from a place of expansion and overflow and joy and creativity. But if you're trying to just have a private jet and a $10 million mansion because the frequency through which you're desiring it is one of lack, one of fear, one of shame, one of needing to be good enough, then it's not about the darn mansion. It's not about the private jet. It's about the frequency through which and the whys. I think that's really important, and also super relevant to the next law, which is the law of vibration, because everything is energy and it vibrates at a specific frequency. And so with that, what we're talking about is, like, perfect example, a dysregulated nervous system emits survival-based signals. The survival-based signals are threat, they're fear. That energetic frequency is emitted into the atmosphere, and our kids or our colleagues or our partner, anyone around us picks up on that frequency of vibration. And what happens to them? They detect the threat, their threat responses become activated, and now they are in a survival state. And this is how, you know, one narcissistic or over micromanaging leader or manager, or one parent who's a bit emotionally unstable or unpredictable, can completely change the atmosphere of an entire home, an entire workplace, an entire community.
You can feel it, yeah. You
can feel it. And that's the energy. It's the law of vibration. And so it's kind of like a leader who is really grounded and really embodied can walk into a room and shift the atmosphere of that room simply by being, because their energy sets the tone. I just got goosebumps even on my face. It's so powerful. Have you ever noticed, this is actually very, very interesting. I learned that even text, like if you're reading a book, that book is written at a frequency that is dependent on the person who wrote it. And it's also why, like, I had read the Bible many, many times in my earlier life, but obviously I was reading it from the frequency of pain and trauma. And so I read certain things a certain way, and my interpretation, it was like the message I received when I read that was message A. And then as the more that I evolve, the more that my personal frequency and vibration increases, when you read that as a spiritual text, you realize that the meaning of what you're reading is very different. And there's been times where I have been writing, like whether it's my own book or my own book chapter or my thesis even, and I've been writing at a frequency of safety and calm and receptivity and connection, and I'm just flowing the writing. And then if I go away and life is hectic and I come back and I try and read the exact same thing, but I'm trying to read the stuff that I wrote from a frequency of shame or embarrassment or hurt or, you know, exhaustion, the stuff that I wrote won't make sense to me. And I'll go, this is just confusing. It doesn't make sense. It's
give you the ick.
Too over my, exactly. And so I used to teach this to my research students when I would say, be really mindful of the energy and the frequency and the mood and the emotional state you're in when you write. Because if you are in a frequency of safety and expansion and love and connection, and you sit down and have an amazing writing session, and then 2 weeks later you come back to edit what you've written, but you're in a stressed, chaotic frequency, you are going to be down editing your work. Your work will be worse after your edits because of the frequency through which the lens that you're looking at it. And this is like insanely important. And it's not about like control. I think where this becomes a trap is that people think that they have to suppress their emotions. They have to suppress grief or frustration or exhaustion or anger or whatever, and that they have to always be on and always be high vibe. But that denies their humanity. That's not the point. The point is to have an awareness of your frequency and then be equipped to know how to shift it.
Absolutely. Vibrations everywhere. Like energy doesn't ever die. Can't be killed, can't be destroyed. It just gets transmuted, changes, moves on, takes different forms. Now, when you sort of think about, when you spoke about the parent or someone walking into a room, right? And the energy changes one way or the other. Let's just say for the negative at the moment, for this example, that someone walks into a room, and I'll use a parent-child dynamic here. A parent's not coping well for whatever reason, but within their best intention, they're not wanting to pass it on to their child, right? And so what have we been taught? That if you've, I don't know, in a battle, if you're not doing too great, you got to pretend that everything's okay. You got to tell the kid that nothing's wrong. You're masking it. But the kid sort of looks at you and goes, everything all right? You go, yes, everything's fine. The funny thing is the kid's going, what is going on? Because I feel terrible. And I think you're terrible. You're telling me that everything's fine.
Yes.
What does this mean? Is this a me problem? Are you lying? Is it like whatever's going on? And so and we've spoken about this many times before. Yes, it is a form of gaslighting. Now, it's come with good intention, but it doesn't stop the fact that, gaslighting is the practice in which you get someone to question their own feelings and thoughts and beliefs.
Yes.
Right? So it is happening. Now, if you sort of say to them, look, I am going through something. Yes, you've absolutely picked up that I'm not quite right. But you know what? I'm going to be doing a couple of things to try and shift it. And, I'm fairly sure by this time or that time will be okay. But look, thanks for letting me know. And thanks for
noticing.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this full situation of, oh, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. I'm going to keep all the crap away from you. Well, you can't.
It's so true.
Because the law of vibration says that you can't.
Yeah. And not only that, it's damaging. It's damaging to the other person when because I see this a lot with parents, they try to protect their kids by masking. So they will try and protect their kids by saying I'm fine, everything's great. But while inside their nervous system is pinging and inside they are anything but fine. But law of vibration is literally saying that the energy of what is inside of you is emitted into the atmosphere, and your children are receiving the energy of you not being fine. So the more you say, I'm fine, everything's fine, actually harms them, because now they have the confusion of the energy that they are perceiving with the mismatch of the message that you are telling them. And so you don't have to go into the ins and outs. You don't have to go into all the details of, well, they said this and like, this is why I'm not fine. You simply have to acknowledge.
Oversharing would be a problem. Absolutely.
That would be inappropriate. But you have to acknowledge. And so my approach with this, my son is very sensitive to this in particular. And if he notices, it's really interesting because he will notice things even when I don't notice that I'm feeling that way in my body. And he'll come up to me and he'll say, Mum, you seem a little stressed right now. Is there anything I can do to help you? and I'll say, wow, mate, thank you for noticing. I actually hadn't even noticed. Or, wow, mate, thank you for noticing. I actually am a bit stressed at the moment. I've got some stuff going on with my work and I feel a bit overwhelmed because I don't know what decision to make. I'm certain that I will make a decision and that whatever decision I make will be absolutely okay. But right now I just feel a little bit worried about which way to go. And I really appreciate you noticing. Thank you so much. Yeah. A cuddle would be really lovely. And so that isn't going into the detail. It's not oversharing. It's not giving him all the ins and outs that would not be age appropriate, but it's acknowledging that what he's picking up on is either accurate or not. And if it's not accurate, like if he's picking up that I'm really stressed, but I'm actually not really stressed, maybe instead of stressed, I might be really exhausted. I can go, thanks for noticing that I'm not myself, mate. To be honest, I'm not really stressed. It's just that I really didn't sleep well last night and I'm feeling very exhausted. And so I can, again, acknowledge him, and I can also correct, but also self-assess and go, what is going on? Am I stressed? Oh, no, I'm not stressed. I'm just absolutely wrecked. And then communicate that. But that's how they learn to have that inner trust and to trust their intuition and to trust their felt lived experience and to make sense of that. So important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second thing I wanted to touch on with the law of vibration is, just like you said before, not only what you consume with your eyes, your ears, your mouth, all of that, is it you pick up on the vibration of whatever that is, right?
Yes.
So if you're watching something that is, got to do with the doom and gloom side of things, or if, you're looking at horror stuff, or if or high vibration, the complete opposite. You are taking in that energy. And one thing I've also been sort of navigating is what you eat and supply chains, right? Have you ever sort of noticed that, let's just say you get a coffee from a cafe, notice the energy of the barista, notice the energy of the waitress, notice the energy of all of these things, and then you will be consuming that. Now, there are ways in which that you can, I won't say protect yourself, but you can either harmonize the energies, or you can sort of just take what's for you. And that's with being grateful for what you're receiving.
Absolutely.
When you look at something and say, I am grateful for everything that has come to this happening, then all you're going to be taking in, well, you're basically injecting a gratitude, an energy into it that you're going to consume again.
That's right.
And so then that's when people then start talking about sort of carnivore versus vegan versus all of that. The whole thing is that there's a supply chain with it. There's either an animal that's died or animals that have died for the plants to be consumed. Like, there's a whole ecosystem
Absolutely,
that
there
we
is.
absolutely sort of live in. But if we can apply the gratitude of how this came to be, and I think that's where, it came back in the old days, my parents used to sit around and say grace, right?
Yep.
Have a prayer.
We do that. We say grace and we have gratitude for the food that's in front of us. We bless it to our bodies. We bless the hands that have made it. We just bring a moment of thanks for that meal and that food. And I truly believe that, first of all, for us to be in the frequency of Thanksgiving, we need to lift ourselves. If we're down in the dumps and grumpy, the very act of giving thanks for our food lifts our frequency, which means that our body is in a state ready to actually receive the food, digest the food well. It completely changes the way our physiology even handles the food. And I agree with you, like, in terms of bringing in that positive frequency into the food that you're eating, fully believe that.
So, and the funny thing is, all these laws, because I'd like to go into the law of correspondence, right, straight after this.
Yeah.
Because, as within, so without. God, it's just, they're so, like, you can really see how you can string them together. It's not like there's one big one over here and there's one big one over there.
Yeah.
Because, the law of correspondence, really, for me, at the heart of it is you are the change.
Yes.
It all starts within. You have it within you. This life isn't about learning. It's about learning to remember. It's about trying to take everything that's been piled onto you and to lift and process through it. And how you navigate that is that brand new experience, because as we come through, we forget. We forget who we are. We forget where we've come from. We forget what's going on, so that we can navigate a whole new way.
Yeah.
And so, when you take that law of correspondence, and, that's why I love having this symbol here, because it's a symbol of the law of correspondence, two intersecting triangles. One going up, one going down, as within, so without. As above, so below. And when you take that and you sort of go, I am the start of all of this, and you understand these other principles, like the law of attraction, well, it's sort of like, how closely aligned would be the law of correspondence, the law of attraction? Because it's sort of like it starts from within, and you're basically bringing in what it is that you're seeing.
Exactly. And we see this in our healing work, right? Like a dysregulated parent, i.e. a parent who has chaos within, is going to interpret a child's behavior as threatening, as naughty, as defiant. But a regulated parent, i.e. they have calm and clarity, I guess, within, they're going to see the unmet need beneath that behavior. They're going to be able to respond, because their inner world allows calm and clarity in the outer world. And I think, in business leadership, I see it all the time. And I can even see the moments when my own dysregulation shows up in my leadership, because if I'm feeling chaotic internally, then my team experiences operational chaos. And my clients might experience operational chaos. And so when I take a break, this has only been a recent experience even, where I was feeling really, really overwhelmed and had so much on our plate and so many moving parts and so much happening. And it wasn't until I took a step out of my business and actually took some time, created the space to regulate, to calm myself down, to gather my thoughts, to sleep longer instead of getting up at 4:35 and working.
Wow.
Giving myself more sleep and more time by shifting my internal state back into order and clarity and calm. All of a sudden, all the stuff, it was almost like all the stuff in our business just went, got to do this, then this, then this, then this, then this, and then this will happen. And then once we've done that, we do this. And everyone had order and clarity again. And so literally just this morning, because I was saying to you, Dave, that I'd bulk recorded recently, and it's very, very, very demanding. Just this morning, one of my team members messaged me and said, I don't want to put pressure on you, but I just want to see, like, how are you going with the focus, like what you want us to focus on. And I said, thank you so much for checking in. Full transparency, I have not had capacity to look at that. These are the tasks that you can continue chipping away at. But as soon as I've had capacity and I can actually look at this through the lens of clarity and calm, then I will get you a focus, like things to focus on. Because it is so freaking true. Where else in relationships, if you believe you're not worthy of love, it's literally the most common belief that I see across the board. I'm not worthy of love. You are more likely to tolerate unhealthy relationship dynamics. Whereas when you heal your own self-worth and you embody that you are worthy of love, the things that you tolerate and allow in relationships, and therefore, law of attraction, you're attracting a higher frequency, completely shifts. And so you can apply this to everything. One thing, the distortion I would say is, how is this weaponized? Well, it's kind of like telling someone who is a abuse sufferer or a trauma, who's experienced trauma, that they created their own suffering. because they hadn't done the inner work or because of whatever else.
Or someone with a very severe disease or disability. It's sort of like, you know, you even think about it and sort of go, well, who would say that? But yeah, there is an experience or a learning.
That's it. And so the truth there is, even though you didn't cause your pain, like you didn't go out and go, oh, I'm going to hurt myself, I'm going to go and get abused today. I never asked my first husband to treat me the way that he treated me. However, I can look at the effects in my life and see the treatment, and then it's my responsibility to choose what to do with it now. And healing doesn't mean to say that we've asked for it. It doesn't mean to say that we have to turn around and go, oh, well, I asked for it. You know, I did this, and so therefore they did that. But it means that you're making the conscious choice to reconcile and heal from within so that you don't continue to carry it forward.
Yeah, 100%.
We've covered 4. I'm conscious of the time. Should we wrap this one up and come back? We might have to split this into 3.
I think so. All right, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Deep chats. Click subscribe.
7 more days, or depends on when you're watching it. There'll be another episode coming next week. So hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments below. By the way, it costs you nothing to hit like, hit subscribe, and comment what you'd like to talk about. Remember,
and definitely no deep topics, because Dave and I hate going deep.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
See you next time, guys.